Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Best New Releases. Today's episode is about honing your craft to help you achieve whatever your goals as a writer might be. There are many things you can do, but I wanted to talk specifically today about writing courses and surrounding yourself with trusted editorial voices. I was lucky enough to meet today's guest early on in my career, and she's so special. I wanted you to meet her too. Emily Peddler has worked as a writer, editor, and creative writing lecturer for over a decade. Her short fiction has been published widely, and she's won several prizes, including a Commonwealth Short Story Award and a Ruth Rendell Short Story Award. She has an MA in writing from Sheffield Hallam, where she founded Matter, a literary anthology she edited for 4 years. She is a firm believer in the importance of mentoring emerging writers and has worked extensively with students both at City St George's and in workshops she runs in London. Emily is a course director for the Novel Studio, which she co-founded, as well as heading up the writing short courses at City St George's. She also runs her own editorial consultancy. I met Emily through being a student on the very, very good Novel Studio course, and today she is still the first person I send early drafts to before I send them to my agent or publisher. Huge, warm, heartfelt welcome, Emily Peddler.
Thank you, Hannah. What a lovely introduction. That's so kind. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to on your podcast, which I've really been enjoying listening to.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I wanted Emily to talk to you first about writing courses. Um, Tell me, first of all, how did you get into it?
So I did an MA in writing at Sheffield Hallam, as you said, and I got a job at City St George's many years ago, just as a visiting lecturer. I was covering for someone initially, and then I took on the course that they were running because they moved elsewhere, and absolutely loved it. So, really enjoyed the whole process of teaching creative writing and thinking about it. And that's when I started to think about designing courses, which is where the Novel Studio was born all those years ago. And but I think the real turning point for me was I worked with the writer Monique Roffey some time ago. We were both writing memoirs at the time, and we used to meet and exchange work and look at it in advance and then talk. And it was like such a powerful experience for me of being mentored, being seen as a writer. And it made me really, want to do more of that. One-to-one with writers. So that's kind of how I started to work with writers to beyond the courses. And that's something obviously I love doing with your work, which is a huge honor. And that led to the Book Edit, which is the consultancy that I set up. But yeah, it was really about that, the power of somebody seeing the gold in your writing, and helping you to bring that out more and to develop it and to strengthen it. And that's something that Monique gave me, and then I really sort of valued hugely.
And that process is precisely the thing that for me in the Novel Studio changed how I wrote, because I went from sitting in a room on my own suddenly to sharing that work with other people and with the teacher. And the feedback that I got made me see everything in a completely different light. And it was really wonderful. It changed everything. What do you think that does to writers when they come out of their rooms and they start talking with other people? Because obviously being a novelist is such a solitary career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the huge values of a writing course, is that sense of community and accountability. You have to submit by a certain date. Writers are notoriously bad with the deadline, so it's good to have a deadline to stick to. But you also, if you don't meet it, you're letting your group down as well as yourself. So there's that. But that community is huge, and we've seen it time and time again, year after year. The Novel Studio students continue to workshop after they've left the course, and one of my favorite things is going to someone telling me they're getting published and then going to a book launch, and there's several people from the course there, which is just so lovely to see that support that continues beyond the course.
So much discussion, isn't there, about writing courses and whether when you are building a career as a professional writer, whether you should attend a writing course or not, whether writing is something that you can learn from other people or whether it is something that you intuit and practice time and time again. So my firm belief is that I think if you have a need to write, learning your craft is absolutely essential, and learning it from people who have written and studied it and understand how to communicate those lessons is so
Mm.
valuable. How do you guys go about designing courses and working out what is important to initially communicate to aspiring writers?
Yeah, well, I think I love that idea that that you of your belief and how you see it, and I think that really chimes for me. It's the kind of an apprenticeship. It's something you don't just wake up one day and you can write a novel and that's it. It is a process of iteration. And you need to it's revising, it's reseeing, it's all of those things. But I think for courses that like the Novel Studio, you're looking at so many aspects from the very first germ of an idea. How does that turn into something else? How do you know if it's got legs? um could you think about it in different ways of telling that story? And that's really the first term. And then in the second term, you're really building on that with fictional techniques and looking at specific aspects of craft. How can you bring out how can the dialogue work better? How can the setting work on more than one level, all of those things. And then we go look into the industry, so there's all of those aspects covered. And when thinking about designing that particular course, that was exactly what I was thinking about. Was I'd come off the back of the MA and we'd had like a term studying novel writing, and it was like, oh, and then you're supposed to write a novel. I that was not enough. I wanted more. So it's like how to build that into a year and solely focus on novels, because at the time, quite a lot of the MAs you could be in a group where people were studying short stories, novels, and poetry all in one group, which is kind of wonderful in a way, but it's also great to have the focus of that particular form. So that was what we were thinking about. And also, so it was all the things I kind of got from the MA, and then all the things that I wished I'd had, and more and longer time to spend as a group. But also that really important thing of building that trust in a group. So we deliberately delay the workshopping of the prose itself to the second term, so that in that first term, it's really about getting to know each other, getting to know your ideas, road testing, synopses, and thinking about it on that level before you go into what can be the more exposing part of workshopping your actual
Mhm.
chapters. So yeah, there's a lot of thought about that, and I think that goes for other courses. I designed this story within. I think I told you about that for the book edit this year, and that's more for writers who've maybe lost confidence and are returning to writing after a break. And again, it's that thing of, if you've got a 6 week or 8 week course, you're not going to start workshopping in week 1 or 2. You want to build some, investment, trust, and support in the group before you go into that, what can be more exposing.
The other thing that I remember really clearly from my year doing the novel studio is that it is people by writers who are working in completely different genres, which is really, really useful because you can get somebody critiquing the emotional landscape of your character when their background is entirely in science fiction, and somebody who is writing a romance and somebody who's writing a thriller, and they bring to bear all of their different the focus they both have on their own writing and what they're thinking about with their own pieces, but they bring a slightly different angle to everything that
Mm.
you might be writing, which is a really interesting way of doing things and an interesting
Yeah,
looking at different parts of the craft and different parts of the
yeah.
process.
I love that you like that, because that's definitely something I always didn't never wanted it to be everyone writing the same book,
Yeah.
in a space and a sort of echo chamber. It was like let's have as many different voices as possible, and then to get away from that idea when you're workshopping. I don't like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not about that. It's about, does this work on a craft level, and could what could help to improve it. So yeah, I think that's a real strength to have different voices.
I think that's right because it teaches you as a student in writing that it doesn't matter how a piece of writing is clothed. What matters is the emotional makeup of your characters and the driving force of your story and how you put that story together. And that
Yes.
is the best way of learning that discipline. Barriers to entry to some of the writing courses because
Mm.
obviously both in terms of people's expertise, because people are often at different stages in their writing process. Courses do cost money as well. And right, one of the amazing things about writing is that everyone can sit down, in theory and do it. But these are opportunities that do require resource. So can you just talk me through some of that process of
Yeah.
selection?
So, I mean, in terms of um, yeah, the courses are for not can be very expensive. I mean, some of the MAs it's eye-watering sums to sort of do an MA. I think if the most important thing, there are scholarships out there, and I think it's really worth investigating who is offering that. At City, Harriet Tice,
Yeah.
who was an alumni of City, she initiated a scholarship and funded it for 4 years, which was absolutely amazing. And since then, we've got another donor, and he's just agreed to a second scholarship. So we've got two fully funded scholarships on the Novel Studio, which is for writers from low income households, which is great. And in fact, I'm trying to do that on there's 4 or 5 other short writing courses where there's a free space on the course for someone from a low income household. So always trying to think about that, and looking out for opportunities like that, because that is yeah, it can make all the difference. And I also run this prize at the Book Edit, the Writers' Prize, and that's for writers from traditionally underrepresented communities in UK publishing. And the reason for that is to give a kind of to open doors and access to the industry, because the prize is essentially reading in front of invited agents.
Mm.
So it's a kind of way to get into that, and it's totally free. It's all run for free. So I think those are, yeah, just looking around for what's available. There are bursaries. TLC does a free read scheme. The literary consultancy, Spread the Word, does lots of free schemes as well. There are lots of literary development agencies out there that are doing stuff in that space, and there will often be a scholarship or a bursary. Just making yourself aware of that.
Yeah, so it's a really good thing, isn't it, to join the social media accounts of some of those main writing institutions, isn't it? Like,
Yes, yeah. And
uh,
there's like Faber Academy. I think Faber
yeah,
Academy do one now, and I mean that's the big change in the landscape since we started the Novel Studio. I mean, I think there was 5 MAs when we started, and there's about 140 now.
yeah.
And then also all these Faber Academy, Curtis Brown, the Novelry, all of these amazing institutions are creators, but they all do, as far as I'm aware, some form of bursary is available for
Mm.
their courses.
So if you're a student of a writing course, you've got onto the course, you are meeting other writers, workshopping your idea, trying to get it into a place where you can plan a draft and get a draft at the end of either that term, or at least have a really good amount
Mm.
of words under your belt and a plan for the next part of the draft. Um, while the students are on the course, can you tell quite early on what the bones of the ideas and the bones of the writers and how those will translate into the marketplace? So do you read people's sort of early submissions and go, wow, yeah, that's really good, that could work, or that writer has got a really good grasp on character, dialogue. So I'm just really
Yeah.
interested in how teachers pick up that potential at an early stage and
I,
how you then
yeah.
developing that through the course and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question and interesting. And I think there's you can tell very early on that there's a kind of confidence that can be shown in even a couple of pages of someone's prose. that they have an idea of how to tell a story. They have an idea of, grabbing you by the scruff of the neck and giving you something that you're going to want to read on. I think it's that page turning quality that you can tell, but it's also kind of emotional truth that can come through, and you can tell that someone's really paying attention. I think that's a quality that I think really sort of stands for me, really stands out for um, in writers who end up being published, is that real ability to pay attention to the detail of the way someone speaks, the way someone walks into a room, the way someone lies, says one thing but is thinking another, or all of the actions that people take, those minute details that are what you need to bring to bear on a story to bring it to life and make us care. That curiosity to do that is what I think you can tell that in a few pages, but you can also nurture that and develop that over time.
Mm.
Of course, also sometimes people submit something to go on a course and they change tack completely in the first term. So you might have seen great potential in something and they do something completely different, but then that can be equally as good. It's just they've just changed their mind. But I think a lot about this paying attention theme for me, it's really like key, especially in our sort of attention economy that we're in, and our attention is monetized to go to places that are not necessarily good for us, or it's just consuming content and doom scrolling and all of the rest of it. So it kind of becomes quite a radical act to pay attention as a writer, and to do that. I was thinking about that, reading your latest Substack on your parents' move, which just was really, it really, really got to me. I was like really moved by it. But it's that I was like, what is it about that? And it's about that ability to pay attention to those objects and to really bring that to life for us. And in doing that, you invite the reader into that experience. And then there's a sort of a communing between the reader and the writer, which is so powerful in fiction and non-fiction, what you were writing. But yeah, I think it really marks you out in that sense.
For me, that was honestly one of the most valuable things about being in a writing course and in a room full of writers with a really good teacher, because I think part of learning your craft is about developing your confidence about what people respond to you in your writing. So if you're reading something out and a teacher and two students just go, "Whoa, I hadn't really noticed that people largely vape in their hands, and you don't see the vape and you just see the steam." And, I hadn't noticed that. And for me, that brings out, something about that character and who that person is. That's about strengthening your relationship with the audience and what the audience can see in you as a writer. And I think that's just as valuable a part of learning your craft as,
It's huge. It's huge.
understanding like how the psychology of a character works and what we do and don't say on the page.
No, that's so huge. I love that way of putting it. I think I was reading George Saunders. I know you're a big fan as well, but he was talking about the empathic function of fiction. It's
Mm.
not just you as the writer creating the character and empathizing with the character in order to bring it to life, whether that character's doing good or bad things. It's also what you're doing. You're creating that empathic connection with the reader as well. So there's that all going on at the same time, and I think that's so powerful. It can be that's they say fiction has been proven now, scientifically proven to improve empathy in the reader.
Yes.
We need it. We need
And
it.
I think they are literally today launching something uh, at a government level to make sure that reading stays alive because of how important
Wow.
it is for empathizing with our fellow human beings. Um,
Wow.
so,
Check
Em, I
that
just
out.
wanted to also talk to you about that. Obviously, you've been part of this writing course, and I think part of building a career as a writer is then knowing what step to take next. So you've got to finish your draft, you've got to redo your draft, and at some point you've got to step in to the industry. And part of the writing course, part of the novel studio, was about how you present your pitch and how you present to agents. What do you find yourself talking about sort of common industry myths that people debunking certain myths with your students where they just go, "No."
Yeah, I'd say the biggest one is the size of your advance. That's the
Yes.
big that's number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think there's you have to manage that. We try to manage that expectation actually at interview level, not the advanced thing, but just in terms of the idea that coming on a course equals publication is one I would always try to um, manage
Mm.
when someone's thinking about a course. Because obviously we've had quite a lot of success from the course. There's lots of published alumni, and it's had a great publication track record, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen for everyone. So you have to make sure that that's not it's not the only reason that they want to do the course, is that this, or that this, if they don't get published, then somehow that the year's been a failure, because I really feel that that is not the case. I think that writing a book, whether or not the industry picks it up at the end, which is out of your control, writing the book you want to write and making that the best book it could be is really valuable, and is something you can control, but not what happens to it ultimately is a little bit out of your control.
That's right. And some of these kind of more abstract lessons about being a writer and then turning it into a profession are hard won, and they can be quite difficult to teach, right? Because some of
Mm,
this absolutely has to come from inside, and it's something you have to nurture. And I remember as an agent saying to my clients, when you finished a piece of work, celebrate the fact that you finished it, then put it away and move on and forget about it. You have no more control over it. Move on and do it. And then I started writing and I realized how hard it
mm,
is to do that. And
mm.
that it's not impossible, but you do need to practice that because it's the most
Yes,
psychologically healthy thing to do. Otherwise,
yes,
you get caught, your roots get caught in a project, and it makes it harder to lay down roots in a new project and to start writing from life where you are.
yeah,
And they're really, I think they are not lessons that are suddenly picked up and learned and then put away. You are always learning them as a writer. And sometimes the world is going to jump on what you want, and sometimes the world is not going to be interested in what you have to offer them. And
mm,
part of being a professional writer is developing the skin to go, that's okay. What's the next?
yes,
That's okay. What's the next thing? But it's very hard, and it's hard to teach
yes,
somebody, isn't it? It's very hard
yeah,
to teach someone.
absolutely. And I think there may be that may be another aspect that perhaps marks out professional writers from those who may have a lot of talent but don't end up being published. Could also be that sort of tenacity to not give up when they're rejected. So many writers have been rejected over and over and over again, and they
Mm.
don't give up, and it's that not giving up. So there's a certain tenacity and perseverance and resilience that comes with, if you're going to engage with the industry. Absolutely, yeah.
I think that's completely right. I remember saying to clients of mine, you have to, when they're feeling low about something being, turned
Mm,
down, said you have to imagine that you are one step away from success every single time something's turned down. And it doesn't matter
mm,
whether that's true or not, because I don't know whether it's true, and neither do you. But if you cultivate that state of mind and you
mm.
keep going, believing that at some point it's going to work, you know, yeah, who knows? But you
Yes,
frame of mind
yes.
thing.
It goes a long way.
Yeah,
I think it's that yeah, remaining optimistic, but
yeah,
it's really hard,
terrifically
uh,
hard. Yeah.
and I think that's why I do really think that's why you kind of like there's the industry there, and then there's the craft of making a book. And I think
Mm.
we put the publishing industry module at the end of the year. It's really important. It's so important that they understand, and we as you're doing with this podcast, really demystifying the whole process, and that the industry, we have visits from agents and publishers and all the rest of it. I really, really want people just to also stay, strongly committed to the project that they're writing, and not get too distracted by that side of things. And certainly possibly not until they're ready as well,
Mm.
Yeah.
That's right. And it's, that's another really interesting and challenging side of it is that you don't, you can quite often think, I know I'm ready for this step, and it
Mhm.
doesn't work out. And then you look back and go, no, I wasn't ready, but
Mhm.
you don't always know in the moment.
No,
And
no,
that's when a kind of determination inside is the thing that keeps you going. You need to have that amidst being able to sit down and go, okay, fine, that didn't work.
yes.
What's next? What's next?
Well, I was looking at listening to David, I don't know how to pronounce the Booker Prize winning
Oh, Flash.
novelist,
David says yes.
Dave Cesali.
Yeah.
He said the novel before that one he completely abandoned, and it was quite
Yeah.
heartening to hear
Yeah,
that. It's like,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely, definitely. Talk to me, about the book edit as well, and what you
Yes.
that is can be life after a writing.
Life after a course,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's really just um, a way to work one-to-one with writers who maybe have finished a whole draft of a novel, and are either thinking about um, or maybe several drafts, but they just need to have some external feedback. And so we look at we have lots of sort of levels of editing that we do, but the main one we do is developmental editing. So that's really reading in detail, really taking apart what's working, what's not working, and trying making very detailed suggestions for how this could be developed further, and then working with the writer to do that. And that's, yeah, it's a brilliant process, and I've got lots of fantastic editors who are working with me on different projects.
Mm.
So yeah, we do that. We do mentoring as well. I run this prize through the book edit, and also started to do courses as well now. So yeah, it's thriving, and it's really fun. I'm really enjoy all of that aspect, and it's a great place, I think, for when you do just need to get somebody a professional opinion on what you've created, because as you know, it's just so hard to step back and just like, is should
Absolutely.
I just abandon this? Is this going nowhere, or is there something here?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love to help writers to sort of find those connections, to find, like I said, the gold, and to really weave that. Yeah, how I think Stephen King talked about, how can you turn cohesion into a song? It's like that. It's you've written
Mm.
something. Does it make sense? Okay, it makes sense. How can you then elevate it even further to so
Mm.
it's singing? Yeah.
Yeah, I think going back to that sort of the initial theme of this podcast, which is, how do you resource yourself to keep on becoming a better writer? Because I think actually the goal of being a better writer is not really a goal. Being a better writer is a means to achieving your goal as a writer. So you're either whatever it is you want to do, whether you want to entertain or connect with people or to proselytize on something, you you need your craft and you need your resources around you in order to be able to do that as effectively as possible. Like if your voice is going to land, having trusted people around you where you can just go, does this work? And have I gone off on one? It's been a tough couple of months. Is my sort of whatever I've been feeling in those 2 months, has that seeped too much into what I'm writing? Has it ceased to become as entertaining? Or, that's a constant balance, isn't it? And one that is very challenging when you are an author, to have those simultaneous conversations with yourself. So to bring it out
Yes.
to the outside
Yeah.
world with
Yes.
somebody like you, and to keep your community alive after a writing course is just, but
I
it's so
think it's
important.
really important, and I once interviewed the editor Alan Rinsler. He worked
Mm,
with Hunter S. Thompson amongst other people, and he had a a psychotherapy degree in as well as his editing work, but he talked about sort of making the unconscious conscious with his clients, with his writing clients. But I think there's also about the sort of containment is similarly borrowing from that sort of psychoanalytic theories of containing what the writer is, the difficult bits that the writer has written or is feeling, containing those and being able to for them to then pass them back to the writer in a way that they can manage and find a solution for.
Yeah.
I think that containment as an idea also for structure as well. You know, it kind of it's all encompassing, and I think that can be really powerful as well.
But I think that's really true. I remember once I was writing something, and my editor at HarperCollins turned around and said to me, "I think you need to be braver than this. You know, I think you're feeling a bit scared about something, and I think you need to look at why you're scared of it. And I think you need to push yourself into that space because that's when this will start to become alive." Um, and that is again, that is something that needs to come from the outside. You can, because if you're a writer, you're really strongly self-narrative. You're probably the type of person who will spin anything in their life to make it palatable. And you can absolutely do that with your own writing and your own life. But it really, again, like writing courses, editors, people
Mm.
that you trust will hold you to account and go, no, you can be braver than that. Or like, oh my God, that is morose in a way that like I get you needed to write that, but nobody needs to know that. It requires that honesty, doesn't it? It really does.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're running out of time, Em, I just wanted to
Yes.
ask you if you could choose from any writer in the world to come and talk to your students, who would you choose?
Toni Morrison.
Really?
Yes. Yes, I would
Why?
choose Toni Morrison because I loved her books with a passion. But I also loved. I never met her. But I've watched many of her interviews and just think she would be an incredible presence and would give would be would would be able to give something about being a human and a writer and with a level of humility and humor as well that I would think would be um, amazing. So yeah, I would have Toni Morrison.
Lovely. And finally, what is the one piece of advice you would give any aspiring writer?
Um, start noticing things, start noting them down, start to really pay attention, just really be curious. Um, be someone in whom nothing is lost. That Henry James quote is just to start to re-notice the everyday. You know, we kind of walk around in a fog, and we are, as I was saying, just kind of drawn in all different directions. You know, how can we choose where to put our attention? How can we start to notice things more carefully and in more detail? So I think that, and also read, because you can probably learn the most that you need to learn from reading.
Yeah. Emily Peddler, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I really appreciate your presence and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.